Welcome back to Obituary. I'm Ellen DeGeneres, and this is Carrot Top, and we're coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada.
It's very that. I love that.
Oh, hi, guys.
Hi, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day from our favorite Irish gal.
You know, I wanted to ancestry.
Yeah.
Figure out, because I know I'm Irish.
Yeah, I'm sure it's really exotic and...
I know.
You guys will never guess this, but we're 2% Genovese.
No. We're just white as can
girl.
be.
I know. They said that my dad was like, his mom always said, wear a Heinz 57, just everything fucking
Yeah.
white.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of mystery, but I've thought about doing it before, but I'm also like, I don't need to know if there's anyone out there.
I kind of want to know.
Yeah?
I kind of want to know.
I'll get you a kit for your birthday.
Ooh. I just want to know, like, the breakdown so I can feel connected to something. It will become my whole personality.
Yeah, no.
I'm like, I'm Welsh.
She's coming in with, like, the little braids and stuff.
Sometimes I wear my hair in, like, milkmaid braids.
Oh, my God. We have so much to talk about.
We do. I'm pissed off this week.
Oh, shit. Why?
Well, I have kind of two long stories, so you go ahead and tell me first.
Okay. Well, I'm not pissed off. I had a really great weekend. The champ living up to his reputation of being the champ took me on a surprise trip.
Oh, well, yeah.
We went
Surprise for you, I knew.
You found out.
I found out.
We went to... Well, he didn't tell me where we were going, and then we were driving, and I started to kind of put it together at a certain point. Very far into the trip, I was like, oh, like, we must be going to San Luis Obispo. Like, I've never been there, so I was like, oh, cool.
Uh-huh.
And I was excited for that, and then we were driving, and we were passing where the Madonna Inn is, and I was like, oh my God, the Madonna Inn's right there. And then he was like, yeah. and then so we spent the whole weekend there, and if you guys haven't been or seen the Madonna Inn, look it up. It's fucking wild. Every room is a different theme.
I love it.
We were in like the lovers room.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the whole thing was red.
Like heart-shaped tub.
There was just red everywhere.
Oh, okay, okay.
Red carpet, red cutouts and everything. Yeah, no, literally. Our bathroom, it was all a grotto.
Wow.
That was wild.
Wild.
But it was so nice. And then...
How was the food there?
We only had breakfast there because we went out to dinner both nights in San Luis Obispo, like in the downtown, which we went to one place called like the Flower House or whatever. And the pizza and pasta was both so fresh, so good.
Ugh.
And unfortunately, we had given up bread for Lent.
Okay.
But we said it was like an excuse because it was my birthday weekend.
Okay,
so
okay.
We definitely went pretty ham on that. But we had breakfast the next day there, and that was great. And he took me on like a horseback riding.
Oh my God, I saw your pictures.
Yeah,
so cute.
It was just the two of us, and it was so nice. It was so fun.
Little romantic getaway.
I know. It was
How
just
cute.
so cute. So nice that he just put it all together.
Put it all together. Did you take cool pictures? Like, I feel like that would be such a cool background.
Yeah, it's like definitely, I feel like people probably go there a lot for content purposes because of like, it's visually so cool. But
or were you just in the moment enjoying?
We were really in the moment, having fun. Popped a bottle of non-alcoholic champagne.
Okay.
We went in the hot tub every night. And it was nice because even though it was a weekend, it was surprisingly quiet. Like, when we were in the hot tub, like no one was there, and that was so nice.
Nice.
But yeah, it was just such a good time and just so nice.
I love it.
A very nice weekend.
A good way to send your birthday off.
Yes, I did make him watch part of the Lori Vallow Dateline on Friday night when we got there. But then I was like, I'm gonna not make him watch this whole thing right now because that is not his vibe. And so he's like, leave it on. I don't care. But I'm like, no, I'm gonna turn it off.
Dude, that was wild.
It was fucking insane. I just recorded my reaction to it for Cult Leader, and I just kind of went through the whole play-by-play. She's so fucking nuts, and truly, like, the distance between Lori Vallow and reality is just vast.
I know. I just can't get over her being like, Keith, I thought we were going to be friends. And then her saying that she borrowed the wedding dress and wedding rings.
I mean, did you watch the entire thing?
Yes. I watched it on Sunday.
So at the end of it, she's trying to... Clearly her story that she's trying to spin and what she spun to her son Colby was that Tylee accidentally killed JJ and then killed herself.
I know. She's blaming Tylee. She's back in court blaming her.
Well, yeah, and she's defending herself, which is even
That's
wilder,
the craziest part. I know.
I want to be a fly on the wall in that courtroom.
I know.
She's batshit. I was, though, a little disappointed, though, because I know Dateline said, Keith Morrison said, we only had 90 minutes. And he said it several times, we only had 90 minutes. She was rambling throughout a lot of it. He makes reference to that several times, which makes it pretty clear, we didn't get a lot. Because I was after all of that, because they do so much storytelling and interjecting of past Dateline episodes about it in between, I feel like we only probably got about 11 or 12 minutes of the actual interview with Lori.
Yeah.
Which I was like, come on. But also, I get that, in their position, they probably have 90 minutes of footage, but it's probably all unusable because she's just saying out-of-pocket shit.
That's the stuff I want to see.
I know. And there's, tons of clips in there where she's, talking, and I was, listening, trying to listen to what she was saying when they would start fading in the interview or whatever. Play that. I want to see that. I want to see the whole fucking thing. I would have gladly sat there and just had Keith Morrison go in and film that from start to end. I would watch the entire thing. I would want to watch her be mic'd up.
Yeah.
I want to watch the whole thing.
Watch her walk in.
I want to see her jail cell.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just curious about all of it. I just want to see
I know. I'm curious about that too. It was sad to see the footage of her was it Charles Vallow?
Yeah.
Footage of him talking to the police, saying, she's saying that she's going to kill me or whatever. And then her doing that health check-in, the mental health thing.
Mm-hmm.
And her and Tylee sitting there and basically saying, that it was Charles or that Charles is acting weird and she gets away with it.
Yeah. I mean, it was just so bizarre, so ludicrous.
Mm-hmm.
There's a special place in hell.
Yeah.
For Lori Vallow. And
Chris Daybell. What's his name?
Chad
Daybell.
Chris, girl.
Chris Daybell. Wait, who was the alter ego that she said?
Oh, Ned Snyder.
Ned Snyder.
Which is also crazy.
I know.
What do you mean Ned Snyder's here? What do you mean?
Sounds like a Simpsons character.
I know. Well, Ned Flanders. But, the whole thing is so fucking bizarre. And you were in the throes of it with me way back when.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I was shook when they were 5 years ago when we caught it. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it was 2020.
Well, and then I saw a thing on my phone the other day that was COVID-19 was officially declared a pandemic on this day 5 years ago. And I'm like, dude, because part of it feels like that was so long ago, but it also doesn't, it feels
like it was last year,
yeah.
too. Yeah, I know. It is. It's pretty crazy.
Well, and the way it's still talked about, it does still feel like it's,
Yeah.
It's just wild.
I know. And just, things seem not like they're better. I don't know.
Hey, we came out of the pandemic, so that's a plus. We would have never started a podcast together if it wasn't for the pandemic.
Very true.
Well, I don't know. We probably would have been led here one way or the other.
One way or the other. I like that has 13 calories. Not 10, not 15.
Why, Madison's just talking about my Spindrift sparkling water. Passion fruit, orange, guava. It's 13. Delicious. 13 calories and 0 everything else.
That just feels so random. And I'm drinking an Alani Nu.
Yeah, I saw your hand shaking when you set it down earlier.
I'm not. I wish it was.
Well, I'm going to New York tomorrow, and I'm so excited because I haven't been since we did our show there.
Oh, yeah.
The nightmarish trip.
The food poisoning?
The food poisoning and the flops.
And the flop. Yeah.
Damn.
It was not great.
It was not that was not a highlight for us. Meeting you guys at that show was great.
It was just the day we left.
Gnarly.
Yeah.
Gnarly. But so I'm excited to go back and just go back for fun. It's one of my friends is having a baby shower.
Uh-huh.
And so...
Well, you can tell us where you're staying, right?
Oh, yeah. We're staying at the Chelsea Hotel, or the Hotel Chelsea, which is in Chelsea. Supposedly, it's got a pretty haunted history. Some deceased rock stars and stuff like that.
And you say are you meeting friends
there? One of my friends is going to be staying at the same hotel because she's coming in from Maryland. And so... Yeah.
Okay. That'll be
she
fun.
Found the hotel. And so I'm excited. I was like, are you going to ghost hunt at this hotel with me? And she's like, yes, absolutely.
How fun.
I know. I wish you were going.
Oh, well.
We'll have to do something soon.
Something soon, man.
Or we're going to be doing a little fun thing pretty soon next month with someone that I think you guys will love.
Iconic.
She's an icon, that's for sure.
Yep.
And you know who's not an icon?
Who?
Someone who was supposed to be on our show and then ghosted us.
Which one? Which person?
The most recent one. Yup.
Yeah, well, we're just not cool enough.
We're not cool enough.
And you know what? That really pisses me off.
Oh, and speaking of,
I am pissed.
You called me yesterday. You said, I got in 2 fights this week. But I'm not going to tell you about it until we record.
I couldn't tell you.
Okay,
the first one was scary. Okay, so I walked out of the gym.
Uh-huh.
And in the parking lot, I think just naturally, I just kind of scan for people. Like, not any particular reason. I'm not checking anyone out. I'm not judging it. Like,
oh, I am. I'm like, who's crazy?
Yeah, you just kind of do that scan, right? And there was a guy across the way, and I just noticed, okay. And it was noon. I had gotten out of the gym, and I'm walking to my car. I noticed him look at me, not in like a check out kind of way, but I just noticed him looking at me. You know, and you can feel someone looking.
Yeah.
So I get in my car, and something told me lock your car doors. And so I did. Third man syndrome told me lock my doors.
Uh-huh.
And I had such a hard workout on Friday. I don't know what got into David, but he kicked my fucking ass. Like, I wanted to throw up. So I was just kind of sitting in my car, just like, oh my God. And then I see that guy across the way get into his car and drive. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, something just told me, lock your doors, and he's kind of weird, you know?
Yeah.
And I see him drive, and I think he drives out of the parking lot. So I'm just sitting there. All of a sudden, I try to back out, and the car next to me opens its door. And I notice it's him. He had pulled in right next to me, opened his door, and is trying to, like, roll down your window, like, da-da-da-da. And so it happened really fast, but it was scary.
Uh-huh.
And I drove away, and I wanted to drive back and run my car into his car. Like, he was so creepy. You don't do that. You don't see someone from across the parking lot, get into your car, pull into the spot next to them.
There's like a dog under your car, and he's like trying to be like, stop.
No.
You're like,
he was saying, I like your hair. I like your hair. And I was like, bitch, fuck you. I was so mad.
Thank God you drove away.
Well, yeah, I drove away, but then...
Was he following you?
No, but he was there again on Tuesday. And so I had David walk me out. And I, like, told David the whole story. Okay, so that's one.
God,
2.
Scary. I would kill him.
Well, I wanted to after I thought about it, because it happened so quick. Like, the fact that you come and pull in right next to me.
Open your door into his car. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
You like my hair? You like my hair?
Scary.
Gross.
He was scary. Creepy, gross guy. Second, I'm walking the dogs. It's a beautiful day. I like to walk on this, like, green belt thing. There's horses, pretty flowers, whatever. I think the hill that I will die on always, and it's my hill that I'll die on. Nobody has to agree with me, but I think that you need to leash your dog when you're outdoors.
I think most people agree with that.
Yeah. Dogs are my favorite creature on this planet, more than a human, more than any other thing. It's not about that I don't like your dog or I don't think your dog is friendly or trained well or whatever, but, like, anything can happen, right? And there's horses there. Like, walking up and down. Like, I don't know. So I am walking the dogs, and 3 dogs are off leash, all coming towards us. And there's this couple walking. And I'm so pissed, fed up at this point, like, because there's always off leash dogs there. And it's not a dog park. And I yelled. I said, put your dogs on a leash. Like, I was like, what the fuck? Because they were all over, just like running all around. They weren't staying close to them. They weren't anything. And it pissed me off. Like, there were 2 little dogs and then like a big German shepherd. And like, I'm sure your dogs are fine and friendly, but if a dog's going to run up on my dogs, you know, like, it's just. And so they start saying shit to me, and I'm fed up. I'm
like, what?
I'm pissed off. They're like, oh, come on. Like, da-da-da-da. And then the wife, she's probably in her 50s or 60s. Ugh. She goes like this to me.
I would have socked her in the fucking face.
Blowing me kisses. What
did you do?
Me kisses. I said, I think I called her a fucking loser. I can't even remember. I was so heated. I was like, okay, you fucking loser.
Did you do it back to her?
I was doing it back to her. I was doing it back. I blew her kisses back.
Good.
That brings me to this, and I don't have a listener email this week because I have this article that pissed me the fuck off.
Oh, she's on one.
Yeah, and it's going to piss you guys off, okay?
Let's hear it.
Okay, this is from Vice.com, and it is an article that says this cemetery is charging for VIP passes to visit dead relatives.
You're fucking lying.
I'm not fucking lying to you. It says a cemetery in central England that bills itself as a unique, independently owned cemetery.
Oh, the gentrification of cemeteries.
It's fucked up. Has just implemented an idea so bad, so callous, so greedy that you'd think they'd been taken over by an American private equity firm. But alas, its owners are just mean, as the cemetery has implemented a new pricing system that requires grieving people to pay a fee to enter the cemetery to visit their deceased loved ones. It's some real ghoulish shit. Starting in January of 2025, so 2 months ago, only VIP pass holders will be allowed to enter the Garden of Remembrance on weekdays after 3 p.m., on weekends or holidays, or when the office is closed.
I was going to say, like, if it was like an after hours thing, even that's fucked up. You should be able to visit your deceased relatives. But like weekends, holidays, when they know people are going to visit their loved ones.
Yeah. So it goes on to talk about it, but I guess the cemetery, this is what it says. The cemetery's owner, Jason Taft, says that people have got it all wrong. The cemetery will stay open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, for the general grave visiting public. But if you want to visit from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. when it closes, then you'll need a VIP pass. Okay, and then he says the new security measures aren't to keep out those who haven't paid for VIP access, but to protect those visiting their deceased loved ones from potential break-ins.
Then hire more security. Then if crime is that bad there, then hire a private security company to come patrol it. Don't fucking charge people who they're not going to obviously uninter their loved ones. You fucking losers.
It's such a fucking bunch of bullshit to me. Like,
now it's gonna be like, schedule ahead your visit.
Like,
schedule
it's
ahead.
Disneyland. And how cruel is it to call it a VIP pass? Everybody's a VIP if they're visiting me in the grave.
How about an RIP pass where you let these people rest a little more peacefully, you money grabbing fucks?
So I'm just heated this week, okay?
Okay. Well,
so there you have it.
Well, speaking of assholes.
Okay, let's go.
I've got some Am I the Assholes for us. This first one says, am I the asshole for collecting debt from a grieving mother?
Collecting debt. Okay.
I, male 27, met this woman, 27 female, on a dating app. At first, I didn't know she was a single mom, so we just hung out, had coffee together, and it took a few dates. And one day, she had an emergency and asked me to help pay for something. Since I'm not a nosy person, I gave her the money she needed. A few weeks later, she met another emergency. This time I asked her what the emergency was, and she told me that her child died. So I sent help again. A month later, I was the one in need of cash, so I asked her if she could pay me back the money she owed me, and she said, "Stop pressuring me. You're such an asshole for doing this, knowing my situation." So I respected her decision and didn't pursue it any longer. A month later, she got kicked out of work and asked for help from me again, and I complied and helped her by asking for money from my friends and promising that she will pay them back after a month. The due date came, and my friends are asking me to pay back what my quote-unquote friend owed, so I asked her if she could pay back what she owed to my friends and what she owed me, and she told me the same line: "Stop being an asshole, you know I'm going through so much. Stop pressuring me." So am I the asshole for trying to collect debt from a grieving mother?
I mean, fuck. I don't know what it's like to lose a child, but I think you need to just stop giving her money.
Yeah, stop giving her money. Absolutely. It was crazy of you to go to your friends to ask for money too.
Yeah.
And some people were saying you met her on an online dating site. She could be scamming you.
Yeah, I think you might need to figure out your priorities
Or
and
your
still
brain.
help
You sound a
her.
little gullible to me.
You do. You absolutely do.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely not the asshole. Fucking take her to court.
That's actually insane.
It is insane. And so is this. Am I the asshole for not driving my boyfriend to work because I was spending time with family?
Okay.
Throwaway. A week ago, my aunt died. I, 21 female, have been going between my mom's house and my apartment since it happened to support and spend time with my family. Yesterday, I was getting ready to leave for my mom's when my boyfriend, 23 male, asked where I was going. When I told him, he said, "No, you need to drive me to work." He hadn't asked if I could drive him to work in the past few days, and when I double checked with him, he said, "I meant to ask, but now you need to." I told him no, I was going to go spend time with my family, and he got mad. He said that I had spent enough time with my family recently and I needed to reevaluate my priorities and that I need to show commitment to the relationship. I offered him an Uber, which he refused, saying that he wanted me to drive him.
Oh.
I offered for him to use my car and I'd Uber to my mom's, but he again refused. I completely refused to drive him to work and he called me a bunch of insulting names, so I left for my mom's. He called me and left a voicemail saying that if I came back from my mom's early and apologized, he'd put it behind us. He doesn't have a car. He usually bikes to work, and as far as I'm aware, his bike is in working order. I'm still at my mom's, but I'm genuinely wondering if I should have just been the bigger person and driven him. Am I the asshole?
Red flag, red flag.
Red flag, red flag.
Get out of that relationship today.
Oh, honey, what you need to do, darling, is you need to go online. You need to go onto an online dating website. You need to check the little box that says has car and get yourself a new boyfriend, a boyfriend with a car. Because one thing that everyone has different circumstances, and I understand that. But usually, I'll say 99% of the time, a man with no car is no good.
It's no good.
But, unless you're in like a major city or something.
Yeah, but also the gaslighting, the manipulation, the
You've
control.
spent enough time with your family lately. What?
That is insane.
Bye.
Bye.
You need to leave before he kills you.
That part.
So, leave before he kills you.
God, I hate that.
Isn't that fucking wild?
That I want to shake this person. Like, wake up.
I know.
Leave him. You are being manipulated.
It's hard, though, I feel like, when you're in it to see how crazy things sound. Because, like, I'm sure we've all been in I'll speak for myself. I've definitely been in relationships where, like, if I could go back now, I'd fucking backhand myself across the face and be like, what the fuck are you doing with this guy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
But
once you pull out and get some perspective, it's a whole different
that's
ballgame.
It's like almost hypnotic how love is blinding.
Yeah, love is blind.
Or what you think is love.
Love is blind, baby.
Love is blind. Love is blind. But we're not, and we see right through his bullshit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, no, not the asshole. I think you would have been well within your right to hit him with your car at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Why not?
I gotta stop saying stuff like that because I keep getting, like, in trouble.
Real, like on
Instagram. I've been banned forever for a fucking story I posted that says you should hit men with your car.
I love it.
I know.
There's a podcast that I listen to, and the girl is like, so I'm not allowed to. I think she's like not allowed to have DMs or something anymore. 'Cause she called someone a cunt.
Then they're done that. You know what? People ask for it sometimes, though. People want the smoke.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes people want a little side bitch.
Ooh, how about a sexy one?
Okay.
No.
Get it, Red. Get it, Red.
Big Red. Okay, I have one, and there's going to be some language in here that is outdated. But I'm reading the obituary, so just please bear with me.
And if you DM us to tell us that,
you're getting called a cunt.
We're calling you a cunt.
This is the Associated Press release this obituary. San Francisco. Carol Lee, a San Francisco activist who is credited with coining the term sex work and who sought for decades to improve conditions for prostitutes and others in the adult entertainment business, has died.
We love.
I know. She was 71. Kate Marquez, the executor of her estate, said Lee died Wednesday of cancer, the San Francisco Chronicle reported on Thursday. A former prostitute, Lee devoted herself to campaigning on behalf of those in the sex work industry, a term she coined as the title for a panel discussion she attended at a feminist anti-pornography conference in 1978, according to an essay she wrote. The term has become generally used by public health officials, academic researchers, and others. Carol defined sex work as a labor issue, not a crime, not a sin, Marquez said. It is a job done by 1 million people in this country who are stigmatized and criminalized by working to support their families. Ultimately, Lee argued that until sex workers are included in the conversations about feminism, sexuality, and legality, conversations from which they have historically been excluded, sex workers will remain fragmented rather than collective, and stigmatization will abound, said a tweet Thursday from Swarm, sex worker advocacy and resistance movement, which describes itself as a sex worker-led collective founded in the United Kingdom in 2009. Born in New York City, Lee had a bachelor's degree in creative writing when she moved to San Francisco in 1977. She began working as a prostitute to earn money, but her focus changed after she was raped by 2 men at a sex studio in 1979. She couldn't file a crime report because her workplace would have been closed. The fact that I couldn't go to the police to report the rape meant that I was not going to be able to protect other women from these rapists, she said, and I vowed to do something to change that. Lee's papers will be archived at Harvard's University Schlesinger Library on the history of women in America. Really incredible woman, and it will tie into my coffin spinner today.
Well, we're going to take a quick... I'll tell you what had me spinning in my coffin.
Okay, alrighty.
We'll be right back.
And we're back. Spencer, what had you spinning in your coffin this week?
This week's coffin spinner is brought to you by a late-night scrolling adventure where I learned all about Johatsu. And I cannot wait to talk about it because, Loki, I think all of us have thought or think about it from time to time.
Okay.
Let me start you off with a little story.
Okay.
A little imagination adventure. Imagine Geoffs, Madison, girly. You wake up one morning and let's say you go over to your friend's house and you knock on their door, but there's no answer. You grow suspicious because as you peer through the windows of their home, there's nothing there. Just a completely empty house. No trace of said friend. You check your phone, no missed call, there's no text mentioning an abrupt overnight move, so you call their phone, and there's incessant ringing but no answer. Where, oh where could they be? Of course, your mind might go to a pretty dark place. Mine probably would. Were they kidnapped? Were they murdered? What the hell is going on?
Do they hate me?
Yeah. Or were they abducted by aliens?
Yeah.
But there is another possibility. Perhaps this person disappeared on their own accord.
Okay.
And what if I told you that in Japan, there's an entire hidden industry in which people can actually enlist professionals to help them disappear?
Oh, I feel like that's like in the movies.
Yeah. Well, Johatsu is a very real thing, and it translates to evaporates. So it's pretty fitting, right? Because when somebody purposefully vanishes from their daily life, it's referred to as Johatsu. And I want to be clear on spelling and pronunciation here because I don't want to confuse anyone. Johatsu is spelled one letter off from Jihatsu, which Jihatsu refers to suicide. So there's a distinct difference there.
Okay.
And I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but this is something that I think a lot of people, myself included, have kind of daydreamed about before, especially
Oh my
during
God.
stressful times, like just erasing
Yes.
everything. So they hire these companies and they will erase everything, your online data, everything. And you just essentially can start over, maybe move to a seaside town, get an unassuming job, and just do it all.
Wow.
I mean, I won't go too into detail about that because God forbid I ever want to make a run for it. I don't want to give
Give
up my
away your.
plan.
Yeah, yeah.
Be like, he said he was going to do this one day.
Yeah, but that would be. And just,
Do you
I
ever
feel like,
daydream about that? Like, just like,
yes.
what if I just disappear? Not in like a I hate my life way, but just in like a I could start again.
Oh my God, yeah. No, I if it got so bad, if something happened and was so
Yep.
bad, like I would just go to a non-extradition place.
Yeah.
You know?
Fully. There's quite a few different reasons why somebody would want to do this, right? And probably the biggest catalyst would be debt or financial struggles of some sort. Maybe people who lost everything and they can't see any sort of light when it comes to their finances. Maybe their credit score's fucked. Like, this might feel like, other than, well, like taking themselves out permanently, this might feel like the only option that they have left.
Mhm.
Or perhaps somebody finds themselves in serious legal trouble and needs to just get the hell out of Dodge.
Mhm.
Or maybe they're the victim,
Mm,
perhaps a domestic violence situation or stalker.
1000%. Yep.
I think if you wanted to compare it to something more widely known, you could almost think of it like the witness protection program that you can pay for.
Okay,
It's kind of
got it.
like a witness protection program for the people, by the people.
And is it only in Japan?
I mean, the what we're talking about today, yes, but I'm sure it exists in some form
Everywhere.
elsewhere.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Anything people can make money on, they will. They will
Yeah,
find a way.
absolutely. Unlike in the West, where missing persons are often linked to like a crime or a tragedy, Japan actually has a pretty lengthy history of voluntary disappearances, a lot of cases where people choose to erase themselves,
Mm.
sometimes with silent approval from society.
Oh.
For instance, there's this tale, it's from 1789, that there is this merchant in Edo, which is what is now Tokyo. Apparently, the merchant vanished overnight and his shop was untouched. All of his belongings were there, but he was not. And no one ever talked about him again. Well, a week later, a Buddhist monk arrived in a remote village, taking up residence at a temple under a new name. He never mentions his past, but he is a Majunhin, a person who has erased themselves from their old life.
Hmm.
This isn't just an 18th century story, it's a tradition, one that still exists today in the form of Johatsu, Japan's evaporated people. So this can all be traced back to the Edo period during the feudal era. The Japanese were held to a very rigid social structure, which I feel like is very much still depicted in like television and movies today,
Mhm.
like how strict growing up in Japan is. And it didn't matter what your duty was, whether you were a farmer or a samurai, you had to A, ensure that you were showing an incredible work ethic, and B, perhaps even more importantly, make sure that you were making your family proud. Because if you brought shame to your family, you'd certainly want to probably disappear into thin air to avoid that. It was like the ultimate no-no.
Mhm.
There's not always a daunting reason somebody might want to disappear. There's also religious reasons as well, because many have left their pasts behind in order to seek a higher vibrational setting. Like, for instance, Buddhist monks or Shinto who go off to kind of seek that solitude.
Yeah, okay.
So as time went on and we moved through different eras and time periods, more so into the late 1800s and the early 1900s, cities were expanding, and big cities like Tokyo and Osaka made it really easy for people to quote unquote disappear from their small towns and start fresh somewhere else, usually under a new name. And back to like the topic of shame, people didn't want to bring shame to their family, right? So sometimes their own families would help them disappear because they
Mm.
felt like that was a better alternative versus everyone in town knowing that their loved one was like fucking up,
Yeah.
which is crazy to think about.
I feel like if people could do that here and get away with it, they would.
I mean, kind of like teenagers and stuff, sending
I
them off to
know.
like the wilderness and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All those
Or
programs that
like
are out there.
you hear like teen pregnancies.
Well, they used to send them away to
Yeah, and the mom's actually pregnant and this is my sister.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. So by the 1960s, societal expectations in Japan were at an all-time high, and people were dealing with a lot of pressure both in the workspace and also at home. And so Johatsu, which was once thought of as more of like an ancient practice, was starting to really rise in popularity in the 1960s. And at this point, you could start to enlist the help of professionals.
Mm.
And this is called yonigya, which are businesses sometimes also known as fly-by-night shops that assist people with Johatsu.
Okay.
And so one of these companies will charge you between 50,000 and 300,000 yen for its services, which I think is between $450 and $2,600 in US dollars. But it all depends on a number of factors, including the amount of possessions you have, the distance you're going, if it's an overnight move, if children are included, if the client is evading debt collectors, that comes because I mean they're gonna milk it for all it's worth,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
But it is kind of crazy that you can just go to one of these companies and be like, "Hey,
I'm out of here."
I'm out." Yeah, yeah, and it's a lot easier to do in Japan, and we'll get to why in a little bit. But in 2017, Time Magazine actually sat down with the CEO of Yonigaya TS Corporation, which is like one of these companies that helps people disappear. And in the article, they wrote, quote, Miho Saida is the CEO of the real-life Yonigaya TS Corporation and meets Time at a cafe in the Tokyo skyscraper district of Shingawa. Pale sunlight falls through the windows across tables of businessmen eating club sandwiches and smoking. Shrugging off her coat, Saida talks about the rather bizarre call she fielded from a panicked potential client earlier that morning. It was from a woman whose young son hadn't been sleeping. Her husband, who worked at a pharmaceutical company, had been giving the boy powerful sedatives. The woman was worried about her son being harmed, or even being given an overdose, so she asked Saida if she and her son could just disappear. Saida, 46, is no stranger to disappearing herself. Around 15 years ago, she says she used a lacquered nail to indicate a scar over her cheek. She escaped a violent husband in the coastal prefecture of Kanagawa, where she managed several restaurants. At that time, there was no law to protect domestic violence victims, and police could only ask the abuser to stop, she says. I took the car and the dog, and I disappeared. Sometimes a whole team works on a client's disappearance, swiftly sweeping through an apartment in the dead of night. At TS, it costs between 50,000 and 300,000 yen, depending on the amount of possessions somebody wants to flee with, how far they're going, and whether the move needs to happen under the cover of darkness. And then again, it goes into, taking along children or evading debt collectors pushes prices higher. Every day, TS receives between 5 and 10 inquiries like the one Saida described. Most people simply require counseling or legal advice, but the company claims to help between 100 and 150 people to vanish annually.
Wow. There's something that I really, really love about it when it comes to like a domestic violence situation. If you're avoiding debt and whatever, okay, fucking figure it out. But the domestic violence part or the stalking part is so incredible because unfortunately authorities can only do so much, like legally, you know?
They didn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Most of the time, they don't step in until it's already been stepped down, honey, and that's the truth of it. TS's website in Japanese stresses that its consultancy considers each flight request individually and will not assist people involved in or running from legal activities. To a foreign mind, however, the company and others like it appear to be operating in a legal demimonde. To help clients vanish, for example, Saida says that TS's 22 branch offices can take out dummy cell phone contracts or redirect mail to red herring apartments. In stalking cases, the company can sweep cars and houses for bugs and tracking devices.
Wow.
Although TS is among the largest, Saida claims there are many companies like her working to fill the gap left by police, women's shelters, and social services. That gap has partly arisen, critics say, because of police inability to prevent continuing abuse in cases of domestic violence. Japan enacted its first domestic violence law only in 2001. As recently as 2015, official statistics show 1 in 4 Japanese women were suffering abuse from their spouses, the Japan Times reports, noting that some experts think the actual numbers could be far higher. Almost all my clients have gone to the police and filed a report. but the police can't give practical help, Seda alleges. But yeah, I thought it was wild, like hearing from an actual person who works at this type of business. And like, I don't know. Yeah, I do feel like there's going to be a rise in them. I feel like, because picture how many people just get like canceled or kind of like outcasted from society. They'd probably love to be able to just go start over somewhere new.
Yeah.
So now, say somebody you loved enlisted the help of an agency like this to disappear, and you might have zero idea of what happened to them. The reason that it's so easy for someone to disappear there, though, in Japan is because of their privacy laws.
Okay, I was going to ask, like, okay, so how are they getting away with this?
Yeah, because you would think, like, okay, if I went to my friend's house and they weren't there, I'd probably report them as a missing person or something eventually.
Make a TikTok about it.
Yeah. Well, Japanese privacy laws are so strict that even if you report someone missing, police can't disclose their whereabouts unless there is a suspected crime involved. So basically, if someone wants to go missing, provided they're of legal age, they have every right to disappear. And if the police go and track them down, like say a husband wakes up and his wife's gone or vice versa, and they report them missing, even if the authorities track down the woman or the wife or husband, they don't tell the husband where they went.
Damn, that's kind of cool.
It's kind of nice. Yeah, but if there's nothing that suggests someone left unwillingly, they don't prioritize them as missing persons either, obviously, because there's so many other cases to worry about.
Mind their own business.
Yeah, they're not coming through credit card activity and tracking people's phone records. Like, none of it. They just don't do that.
Damn.
And while technology is making it increasingly harder these days for someone to disappear, it's still very much happening. And I'm so interested to know about like how often this happens in other countries, including the United States, but also just like if any of you listening in Japan have any insight or personal stories, like,
or have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that you tell us, but
we won't tell.
We won't.
Please write into us if anyone knows anything about anything like this. But I thought it was so cool because I guarantee there's got to be like angel groups and stuff in the U.S. that help people escape violent situations.
Totally, absolutely.
When authorities won't, you know,
really cool.
And I've seen enough Lifetime movies to know that. I mean, there's a lot of people trying to get out of those domestic violence situations that have to take it into their own hands.
And when you're trying to leave, that's the hardest time.
Uh-huh.
So,
yeah.
Wow, incredible.
Yeah, Johatsu.
Very cool. Well, we should take a little break, and then I'll tell you what had me spinning in my coffin.
Okay, just don't disappear on us, Madison.
I won't.
We'll be right back. And we're back. What had you spinning in your coffin this week?
Geoffs, Spencer, I came across a cemetery for society's outcasts and a whole bunch of new terms that I am fascinated by.
Oh, hell yeah. Let me just lean back here.
Lean back. Get comfortable. Get comfortable. A cemetery that was kind of lost for many, many years.
Was it in Atlantis, Annie?
It wasn't.
Okay.
It was not, but it was reclaimed in the 90s, and I was just so excited to learn all about this, and I know you guys will be too. So let's dive into the Crossbones Cemetery in London and the Winchester Geese.
Ooh.
Okay. The Crossbones Cemetery is tucked away in Southwark, London, on the south bank of the Thames River. And we've talked about the Thames before, and I want to call it Thames because that's how it's spelt, but I looked it up and it's Thames. Or Thames River. So just bear with me, Geoffs.
Do it in a British accent. Thames.
Hello, I'm going to go take a boat.
Oh, posh. See, I feel like we'd be like Essex girls.
Oh, okay, no.
Right, babes.
Right, babes, we're going on the Thames.
We're going on the Thames, babes. We're going on the Thames, babes. And we're going to get our vaginas bedazzled. We're going to get vajazzled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But we do know that river stunk, honey, in the Victorian era.
Stinky.
Stinky tinky. For centuries, this area of Southwark that is now the Crossbones Cemetery was just an unconsecrated burial site for people who were denied a burial in churchyards, specifically sex workers.
Okay.
These sex workers were known as the Winchester Geese. And I
love them.
love them. And you know what? I want to swan dive into them in just a second. Before I get into their burials, but we got to go back to the later medieval times first and then slightly after. And the medieval times are between the 5th century and the 15th century. And I don't know why, but when I hear medieval, I think way further back than that.
And like a big meat stick.
Yeah, I think of like medieval times, but like the medieval times are also referred to as the Middle Ages, which doesn't seem as far back to me. Medieval just sounds way old.
Medieval, I'm picturing knights in shining armor. I'm picturing castles.
I know, but some of that wasn't.
Yeah.
The Middle Ages. So medieval Southwark we'll talk about first. So Southwark was kind of like the wrong side of the tracks, or actually the wrong side of the river during the Middle Ages. The area was also known as the Liberty of the Clink. It was sort of like this sin city. Here you could gamble, go to theater, which was banned by the church for a moment in time, and you could find a ton of brothels and bathhouses.
So that's like where we'd be hanging out.
Yeah, it's like a red. Yeah, exactly. Where all the fun happens.
Yeah.
I didn't know this, but brothels were once referred to as stew houses during King Henry VIII's reign.
Oh, that big bitch.
Well, stew, they think they got it because stew comes from the French word that means stove, which you would heat water with. So like brothels, bathhouses, that sort of thing. They call them stew houses. This area was like a red light district where you could get away with all things that society deemed as bad. And there were some awful things there. There was something called bear baiting, which was basically animal fighting, which was awful. But then there was a lot of sex work, which society deemed as bad, but we don't deem it as bad. Also, a notable mention was a street in London where brothels were legal. Guess what the street was named?
What?
Cock Lane.
Oh, I've been there.
Well, I got to send you stuff on it because there's a whole Cock Lane ghost story that is insane, has to do with murder, seances, a trial, scandalous shit.
Is it like the Whitechapel? No?
No. That maybe we'll revisit here one day, or maybe it'll fit better on Cult Leader. I'm not sure. Okay, but what astonished me and made me laugh about this whole area was that it was under the jurisdiction of the Bishop of Winchester. So the bishop is a member of the clergy ordained by the Christian church. Right? So basically the Christian church was in charge of this whole area. Starting as early as the 12th and 13th century, the bishops of Winchester were able to tax and license the sex workers in Southwark. So on one hand, that's a really good thing. There's a protection that sex workers were given by being licensed and taxed, right? And none of that is what made me laugh. And by laughing, I mean not in a good way. Like, it made me chuckle because despite sex workers paying taxes, they were not able to be buried in churchyards. They were treated as second-rate citizens and shut out from the church unless they repented and then whatever. But the church gladly still took their money and benefited from their, quote, sinful acts and refused to give them a Christian burial, a proper burial. You know that in the Bible, sex work is mentioned as the oldest profession?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. We will get into burials a little later, but sex workers, because they were taxed and licensed by the bishops of Winchester, were known as the Winchester Geese. And so I was looking up, I was like, okay, I understand the Winchester part, why the geese part? Well, geese, I guess, because there are a few theories, but the one that kept popping up in articles was that these sex workers would try to lure their customers by showing their breasts or like a ton of cleavage.
Hey.
And at the time, they had very pale breasts, most of them, that resembled the feathers of a goose.
Okay.
The Winchester geese were even written about by Shakespeare. In one of his things, it says to be bitten by a Winchester goose meant catching a venereal disease.
Oh, shit.
Goosebumps or goose pimples
Also date back to them?
we still use this today meant that you probably had a syphilis outbreak, which caused a rash. Now, I looked up the modern meaning because I was like, surely that can't be. The modern one is like, oh, because it looks like goose skin, because the feathers and whatever. And I'm like, no.
Girls, we know the truth now.
We know the truth, okay? While researching, I stumbled upon ceramics that were made by Nan the Potter, who was a sex worker in Winchester Geese, but also was an incredible ceramicist. On the Museum of Sexobjects.co.uk, they have a really pretty dish, I'll post it, that she made. It's not a sex object. And they say, quote, few examples of Nan's ceramic work still exist. Although it's known she occasionally worked as a prostitute at the notorious Southwark brothel, the Cardinal's Cap. The establishment took its name from its owner, Cardinal Beaufort, the Bishop of Winchester, who strutted around wearing his red cardinal's cap. The church was heavily involved in the sex industry, with St. Paul's owning brothels in the city and the Bishop of Winchester holding many on the South Bank. And so I say that to say that at the time, sex workers, and still today, sex workers came from every walk of life and all socioeconomic statuses.
Yeah.
Okay, so the rules for the Winchester Geese were surprisingly elaborate. In 1161, King Henry II was said to have formalized 39 ordinances to regulate Southwark's brothels at the bishop's request. They ensured that sex workers could come and go freely rather than be kept prisoner, required every new goose to be registered, forbid them from operating on holy days, and barred certain women from the profession. So there was like no married women, and then no nuns, obviously.
Yeah.
Cursing was also banned. And an example of a law said, and I'm going to be saying some outdated terms, quote, no whore shall entice any man into the brothel by pulling on his coat or any part of his clothing. Doing so would cause you like a fine of 20 shillings. Another rule strictly prohibited a sex worker from taking on a private lover for free.
That's wild.
Yeah, they needed to keep their business official. Oh, okay. Offenses were met with very strict, harsh penalties. Either a hefty fine or you had to go to the clink prison. But also they had this, it was basically a medieval dunk tank where they would dunk you into disgusting water as a punishment.
Bring that back for certain things.
Okay, you know what it was called?
What?
A cucking stool. I know, crazy. So basically, they lived under the bishop's rule and under his protection, but they were also extremely exploited by the bishop, and it like they were tolerated by them because they made money off of them, but then when it came time to bury them and rest in peace, they weren't given proper burials.
That's wild.
So, if these women weren't allowed to be buried in a churchyard, where did they go when they passed away?
The Skull and Bones Cemetery.
The Crossbones Cemetery. Well, this brings me to the origins of the Crossbones Cemetery. A separate burial ground away from the church had to be used for their internment. The earliest reference of this that I could find that has been talked about in my sources that I linked was published in 1598. This writer named John Stowe wrote in a survey of London about a plot of land in Southwark set aside for single women. Stowe recorded, quote, these single women were forbidden the rights of the church so long as they continued that sinful life and were excluded from Christian burial. And therefore, there was a plot of ground called the Single Woman's Churchyard. So basically, by the 16th century, there was a special cemetery for the sinful women of that time. And although there's no record of when it was actually established, it was probably likely a burial ground for longer than end of 1500s, but that's just the first time we heard it mentioned, like recorded. It was very far away from any holy ground, far away from a church or a parish, basically like on the outskirts. Like
any cemetery is a holy ground if you think about it.
Holy, oh yeah. By the 17th and 18th centuries, brothels were pretty much all shut down. And so this meant that the graveyard evolved. While there were fewer geese being buried, the graveyard took in other outcasts and paupers. A pauper is a very poor person.
We know.
Okay, yeah, we do. By 1769, it was known as a pauper's cemetery. At some point, the single woman's churchyard was now called the Crossbones Cemetery. It was first referenced as the Crossbones Cemetery in 1833. Okay, but over the years, thousands upon thousands of outcasts were buried on that little patch of land. It was like a dumping ground for just people exiled by society. During the Victorian era, Southwark was known as like the slums of the slums, between the stench of the river, the Victorians' belief in the miasma theory, which we've talked about in a different episode, and just all the death and disease that infiltrated the Victorian life. Even the outcast cemetery had to be shut down, I guess. According to SmithsonianMag.com, they said that, quote, an 1832 letter from parish authorities had noted the ground was so very full of coffins that it is necessary to bury within 2 feet of the surface, and that the effluvium, which I think is scent, is so very offensive that we fear the consequences may be very injurious to the surrounding neighborhood. And by 1853, no more burials happened at the Crossbones Cemetery. Our story doesn't end there, though. In 1883, the cemetery was almost sold to a private buyer to most likely develop on top of, but there was this act called the Disused Burial Grounds Act of 1884, which was a law that protected old graveyards from being built upon.
Ooh.
It saved it. However, then the graveyard was used as a fairground. They had fairs on top of it.
Kind of fun.
I mean, but you're not supposed to, well, I guess they probably didn't have headstones or anything because it was just exiled.
If I was in a cemetery, I'd be okay with the occasional fair, though.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I love a fair.
Yeah. I guess it just like stunk too bad, and even the people at the fair were like, no,
we're not doing it.
We can't do this. Also, and don't think that body snatchers for medical schools and shit like that didn't happen, because it obviously did. Nobody watched over the cemetery, and it was just left there, overgrown and in ruins. So let's fast forward over 100 years to the 1990s, okay? London starts building the Jubilee Line extension, which was a major new stretch for the underground subway. The land across from the Crossbones Cemetery was purchased as a work site for the underground subway, but archaeologists from the Museum of London Archaeology were given this like short little window to go and excavate the area of the cemetery before they started construction like underneath.
Jeez.
So in 1992, after only about 6 weeks of digging, the archaeologists found 148 skeletons in just a little tiny portion of the cemetery.
Oh, shit.
It's estimated that there are 15,000 bodies buried there.
Jeez.
Among the skeletons that were exhumed were a ton of women, a ton of babies, and the women, they only excavated like 148 of them and then left the other ones to rest. But the ones that they did excavate that were women, some of them had like lesions on their skull that corresponded with syphilis. So they probably died of syphilis.
Got it.
What was also interesting is I tried to find like the square footage of the cemetery, and I couldn't figure it out. But everything says that it's small. And for 15,000 people to be buried there, it is insane. And the interesting part is that they think the Winchester Geese are buried deep, okay? And then people are just buried on top, up to 2 feet.
That is wild.
I know.
And how they haven't been, like, exposed yet, like the body parts from rains and stuff.
Oh, that's true. I know. Once the almost 150 bodies that were unearthed were documented and word got out, many people started to advocate for plans to change regarding the new underground subway stretch and demand to preserve that cemetery. By the mid to late 90s and early 2000s, the Friends of Crossbones was formed, and their aim was to reclaim the dignity of the cemetery and protect it from any redevelopment. They wanted to establish a memorial garden, and suddenly, candlelight vigils were starting to take place at the cemetery. People would come with their candles, pay their respects, and tie ribbons on gates. And I'll post pictures. The gates are full of ribbons.
Oh, I love that.
I know. There was also a plaque placed. It was like a homemade plaque that read, "The Shrine of the Outcasts Dead." And it continued. The shrine grew and continues to grow. There's handwritten messages, flowers, ribbons, little mementos that are left to honor the people buried there. And then around 2004, a new tradition started where every 23rd of the month at 7 p.m., there's a candlelight vigil held in honor of the dead there. And so many people show up. In 2006, the local government donated a sign and installed it. And it was like this official bronze statue. And it read, quote, "In medieval times, this was an unconsecrated graveyard for prostitutes, or Winchester Geese. By the 18th century, it had become a pauper's burial ground, which closed in 1853. Here, local people have created a memorial shrine, the Outcast Dead Rest in Peace." Not only this, but the Friends of Crossbones cleaned up the cemetery, cleared weeds, planted flowers, and created a really beautiful space. There's beautiful statues, too. There's a trans angel statue that's beautiful. There's wings. It's such a beautiful place now.
Oh, cool.
I won't bore you with more dates, but basically, Friends of Crossbones saved the cemetery and have brought it to life in a way that it never was before. And it's absolutely wonderful. And it's open to the public still. And it's just a beautiful place to be.
I'd love to visit.
I would too.
That's so cool. It's so interesting. And I love the Winchester Geese thing. I wonder if people would use that as like an insult for a while. They're like, oh, she's a Winchester Geese.
Totally.
Look at all the Winchester Geese out here tonight.
I know. I want to use it.
Did you see the movie Anora?
No, but I want to see it. Did you watch it?
Yeah, we watched it this past weekend.
Did it deserve Best Picture, you think?
I thought it was really good.
Okay.
I don't know about Best Picture. I didn't see any of the other ones, so I can't say if it deserved it, but it was a good movie.
Okay.
I really liked it.
She marries a Russian guy, and he's like...
She's like a stripper who marries a Russian, bajillion.
He's like mafia, someone, they're looking for him.
You'll see why they're looking for him. But it's good. It's a good movie. A good film, says me.
A good film, darling.
Well, should we move into some obituaries?
Yes, we should. Let's do it. Who do you got?
Okay, I have a very, very short one. It is I came across it in the newspaper archives from Sunday, June 8th, 1924, the Sunday Mercury. It says, "Boy's ghastly death. William Phipps, age 16, employed in the laundry of the Southwark Railway, works at Ashford, fell into a tank of boiling caustic soda. He was severely scalded and died in the hospital."
What's caustic soda?
It's like sodium hydroxide.
Oh.
So chemical. I don't know.
Ooh.
Burned him. It's like lye.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Did he? Yeah, I probably just disappeared.
Well, they went to the hospital. They found him soon enough, but he did not survive that.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. Okay, I have one that has been sent to us a ton of times. It's the viral obituary of the week.
Oh, God. People are tagging me in this every day, and I won't watch it because I want it to be surprised for the episode.
Yes. Okay. Well, you will be. This is for Cheryl Lynn Pohl. It is with heartfelt reverence and a sprinkle of humor that we remember the life of Cheryl Pohl, a.k.a. Nana, who passed away peacefully in her home on February 21st, 2025, at the age of 77 in Granger, Indiana. She loved the Lord and is rejoicing in heaven, embraced by a grumble of pugs. His mighty prayer warrior has come home to rest after a long, hard-fought battle against myasthenia gravis, a heart that wanted to march to the beat of its own drum, aka AFib, and that silly little thing called old age. Born on January 31st, 1948 in Muncie, Indiana, to John and Esther Stebbins, she quickly fell into place as the middle child, answering to Cheryl due to her sister, Peggy, having top billing for 10 years already. Having battled polio as a child, the world made her a fighter from the start. Polio set Cheryl off on her journey of life with a crooked ankle and a crooked sense of humor. I know. Cheryl is survived by a loving lineage, including her daughters, her siblings, her treasured grandchildren, and her beloved pug, Bo. She added many branches to her family tree, including her dearest friends. Cheryl embraced her creative side with embroidery, sewing, and crafts. These activities she joyously shared with her grandchildren, daughters, friends, and even enemies if they asked nicely. No visit was complete at Nana's house without a stab from a rogue needle or pin. Even though some crafts turned out quite questionable, sorry Lucille and the shell people, more often than not, they were lovely and were displayed proudly on every wall and shelf in her home. When not crafting, Cheryl could be found baking with her loved ones and rolling through spilled flour. You only have to mention concoction night to her grandkids to pull up sweet, if not always sweet-tasting, memories. Cheryl loved playing any type of game, especially Heyday, where you could always count on her to sell you loads of duct tape, cream, and butter. Her ultimate joy came from playing dominoes, Quirkle, Skip-Bo. Skip-Bo's like my favorite game. Uno, and aggravation with family and friends regardless of the score. Except with Ella, she really wanted to knock that girl down a few pegs. Unfortunately for Nana, Ella not only lucked out in the grandmother department, but also with games. Having left their running tally of Quirkle at 229 to 297 and Ella victorious. Just as easily as Nana made friends, she also made excuses, often remarking, quote, "Of course the scorekeeper always wins." Nana was an enthusiastic supporter of her grandchildren. She could be found cheering at football games and wrestling matches, keeping stats at volleyball tournaments, emailing back and forth, supporting all runners at cross-country meets, happily enduring hours of track and field events while wrapped up in blankets, texting recipes, watching dance videos online, and taking walks/rides with her grandson around her apartment building. Cheryl had a love of meatloaf, steak, ribs, and chili, which her family and her ostomy bag, Oliver, could not keep up with. She would give you her heart, but never her leftovers. And then it talks about the celebration of life and those details, and then at the end it says, arrangements have been entrusted to Brown Funeral Home and cremation services to help Nana achieve her lifelong dream of having a smoking hot body. Cheryl posthumously apologizes to Joanne's Fabrics for her recent lack of shopping, which likely led to their nationwide closure.
Aw, that's cute.
I know, cutie girl. I love it.
Well, we've spun in our coffins.
We've bitched our obituaries.
Means it's time for some dumb-ass
criminals. Who do you got?
I got Michelle Phillips.
Let me see her. Oh, beautiful girl. I'll post her.
According to KWQC, Shinston, West Virginia, a West Virginia woman was arrested after she allegedly called police over 300 times in the last month and threatened to kill 2 officers. Shinston police responded to 55-year-old Michelle Phillips' home on February 20th for a verbal domestic incident. After responding to the scene, Phillips called and left over 300 voicemails for the department.
Damn.
In one message, Phillips said, "If I had a real gun, I'd shoot the 2 cops that are there." She referred to them as criminals and says she has the right to shoot them. In another message, Phillips was talking about trying to steal and switch surveillance.
Oh my God.
Dead bodies, criminals spying on her to do a sting operation, and poisoning the officers with wine, the court documents say.
With wine?
In one message, she specifically named 2 officers and said, "I'm going to get someone to shoot you." She was charged with 1 count of felony terroristic threats and is currently in jail with no bond set. And I'm sorry, that girl she's going to have a rough time there because they're not going to take too kindly to the gal that was blowing up their voicemail.
Yeah, no way. And what if she mouths off in prison?
Cheryl.
She's going to be in trouble.
Or what's her name? Michelle.
Cheryl was the obituary. Michelle,
what'd you do, girl? God. Shelly, you get off that horn, okay? You got to hang that sucker up.
Yeah, someone ripped the phone out of her wall because you know it's a landline.
You know.
God, well.
She's like.
Yeah. I have a landlord from hell.
Okay.
Okay, this happened during the pandemic in Albany. A landlord named Sean Douglas, he took things into his own hands because he decided to kidnap 2 of his tenants instead of filing an eviction notice. Oh. And I know that evictions are expensive.
Sure.
And so it was during that time, during COVID, where there was like you couldn't evict anybody even if they didn't pay rent. Well, he was so pissed off that he broke into the tenant's apartment during the night with 2 mystery people with him helping, duct tape, zip ties, pillowcases over the tenants' heads. The tenants were a 21-year-old woman and a 32-year-old man. Well, they got an unexpected ride to a motel. Then, 35 miles away, they wake up and take everything off, and they were left in a cemetery. Yeah, he left them in a cemetery zip-tied because he wasn't going to file the eviction notice. The woman managed to escape, found a house, and got help. And Douglas was arrested and charged with second-degree kidnapping. His bail was $50,000, and he's a fucking dumbass. Isn't that
Imagine.
Nuts? I know.
Imagine not paying rent and then just fucking waking up in a cemetery like, girl.
I mean, yeah, during that time, people were protected. The tenants were protected, but he was not having it. He was like,
Lord.
Fuck you guys.
You know what's always crazy? Do you ever see those videos of people who are like, they have an Airbnb or whatever, and then someone moves in and like won't leave?
Uh-huh.
And then
squatters.
Squatters. And the cops are like, well.
That's crazy.
That's so wild to me because you should be able to walk in there, grab them by their hair. And
did you see that hairstylist that grabbed her 18-year-old, whatever, the 15, and pulled her? Well, all the comments I read were like, I'm on the hairstylist side because I guess that 15-year-old tried to not pay for like a wig.
You know what? Honestly, you're going to learn a lesson somewhere, somehow. Fucking robbing people of shit, you're going to get your ass beat sometimes.
Well, and coming from the perspective of you used to do hair, I used to do makeup, and being walked all over, and them thinking that.
Oh, there's days where I was probably one client away from doing that.
I know. I know. Totally. I know.
I'm on there. Well, but you're also an adult. You can't do that to a minor. That's
yes,
different.
You can.
All right. Well, I think Frankie Girl and Hot Dog have just about had it with us sitting here today. Very patient girls. Yes. And so we're gonna call it quits.
We're gonna call it. We've got to disappear. Every episode, he's doing that. Every episode.
Well, you bring it out of me, girl. All right. And we also are going to have some very exciting news that we get to share with you guys, hopefully very soon.
Yes.
So stay tuned for that and make sure you're following us everywhere so that you can see that announcement when it comes out. But that is the cliffhanger that we're going to leave you on this week. So we'll see you next week for some more coffin spinners.
And obituaries.
And dumb
ass
criminals. Goodbye.
Goodbye.